Finally tonight, here the eyes of the world now on Singapore. President Trump and Kim Jong-un are right here in the same city. Their hotels are now less than a half mile apart. And when we join you this time tomorrow night, they'll be just moments away from sitting down face to face. What happens? No one knows. They are the images tonight seen all over the world, except in North Korea. They will likely not see any of this until after the summit is over. President Trump and Kim Jong-un now both here in Singapore. Their hotels just 3 minutes apart. So many people here lining the streets for a glimpse of the two leaders, phones in hand to document this high-stakes moment. American students singing the national anthem, waiting for the president's motorcade. A little more than 24 hours from now, the two leaders will likely walk up to one another before then sitting down to meet face to face. The security presence is enormous here around the hotel where Kim Jong-un is staying and sweeping the hotel grounds where President Trump is tonight. Singapore, of course, the setting for this summit, now thrust onto the world stage. They will meet at the Capella Hotel on Sentosa Island. Sentosa meaning peace and tranquility. Singapore, known for its pride in its food, welcoming the two leaders with new items on so many restaurant menus here. The red, white, and blue bourbon cocktail called the Trump. In South Korea, this group gathering to pray for peace ahead of the meeting, holding these signs of a unified Korean peninsula. The U.S. and North Korean flags flying overhead, Singapore's flag in the middle, all to mark the first time a sitting U.S. president will meet with a leader of North Korea. Thank you for watching here on a Sunday night. Our coverage from Singapore continues with Good Morning America first thing in the morning and, of course, right here for World News Tonight tomorrow. I'm David Muir. Until then, good night.
Welcome back to Political Capital, the intersection of money and politics. Singapore has been chosen as an honest broker to host a meeting that has been 25 years in the making. Here is where Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un will meet to iron out issues that have been the reason of frosty relations for the last 25 years. What can be achieved in a single day, and will we see any material condition change? I speak to a couple of experts. Richard Gerald is in the wealth management space, and his company, Bank of Singapore, has over $100 billion under management. His job is to concern himself with global economic cycles and how they affect emerging markets' monetary policy. Richard has been working in Singapore for over 2 decades and says that even though North Korea is economically isolated, it can still destabilize the rest of the region, especially South Korea.
If you go through a list of all the countries in the world, who's too friendly with America, who's too far away, who's got a system which is too chaotic, who's too close to China, and you cross off all those countries, you don't have many left. Mm-hmm. And Singapore, I guess, it's the one left because it's neutral. It's reasonably friendly with America, reasonably friendly with China. It's a very high-functioning economy, great infrastructure, high security, not too far away from North Korea. So I guess from that point of view, it's not that this is the perfect place, it's just that nowhere else really comes close to being as satisfactory to both sides as Singapore.
Another Richard with a finger on the pulse is Richard Fanning, CEO of Control Risks. This Richard advises his firm's clients on risk and how to manage it. From here to New York, Fanning speaks frequently on geopolitical risk and its impact on businesses. He also says Singapore's stability makes it an ideal place for talks.
Because it's got this long-standing reputation for political neutrality. Singapore has a very strong relationship with China, which has been the sort of, historically at least, the principal superpower ally of North Korea, and it has a long-standing, very good relationship with the United States. And there are very few other countries that can claim to have that sort of twin relationship between China and the United States, a sort of, historically at least, a sort of even-handed approach, never favouring the US over China, never favouring China over the US. That's been a carefully crafted position that Singapore has maintained, that was pioneered and established by Lee Kuan Yew and has been continued by the current government here in Singapore.
A single day, the 12th of June, that's all the time allocated for a meeting between Donald Trump's America and Kim Jong-un's North Korea. There has been very little groundwork leading up to this big meeting. So what can it actually achieve?
Yeah, it's unconventional diplomacy to do a meeting of this importance with this quickly, with this amount of sort of rapid preparation. I think anything that brings together the possibility of a de-escalation of tension over North Korea is undoubtedly a good thing, even if it's not being done in the way that diplomacy normally happens. It's got to be a good thing. And we shouldn't underestimate as well the amount of activity that will be going on night and day to try and make these talks as substantive as possible. But the implication behind your question is that what can we realistically expect these two leaders to agree on when they meet? And the answer is probably not very much. The meeting will be, I suspect, in many ways a kind of symbolic statement of intent by both sides to further dialogue. Ordinarily, a meeting with the President of the United States is the prize at the end of the race, rather than the opening gambit. It is in many ways kind of unconventional, as I say, the wrong way around, but it's happening.
Of course, South Korea is very important because it has an obvious interest in the outcome of any negotiations. If America is going to offer, for example, denuclearization of the whole peninsula in return for action by the North, South Korea is going to be very interested in that type of an outcome.
But inherently, these are talks that are being led more by personalities than by politics. The Donald has already pulled out of the Paris Climate Accord and recently the Iran nuclear deal, while Kim comes with about 25 years of isolation and secrecy.
I mean, everything that President Trump does, his personality is kind of dominates the sort of nature of the conversation. But in reality, this is not about the personality of Kim or indeed the personality of Trump. It's about hard politics. It's about a negotiation, and it's a very tough negotiation because the US stated position is that North Korea has to denuclearize and that it has to negate the threat that it currently poses potentially to the United States and certainly to US allies in South Korea and Japan and elsewhere.
I think the level of trust between the two sides is going to be close to zero, both given the history of relations between the two countries over the past few decades and, of course, given the two individuals involved. I think what that means is that if they do come to any sort of agreement, there's going to be a very heavy emphasis on verification. And as a result, you would expect that there are going to be many incremental steps. We'll do this, you'll check, you'll do something in return, we'll do something more, you'll check, you'll do something more in return. It's not as if they're going to be sign the deal, okay, scrap your nukes today and everybody's happy, because realistically neither side is going to trust the other, and quite reasonably so.
This on again, off again, and then back on again meeting between Trump and Kim certainly has something for both leaders. For North Korea, this would be a coup to sit across the table from a sitting US president. As for Donald Trump, his supporters are calling for a Nobel Prize.
North Korea is getting what it's always wanted. It's being taken seriously as a nuclear power, whatever condition exactly their nuclear capability may be. They're getting what they want. So in many ways, it's a big gamble for the US to enter into these talks. It isn't how one might normally do it, but that's the nature of the Trump presidency. He chooses to do things in a different, sometimes radically different manner to what historically has been the way that diplomacy has been practiced by the US president.
Singapore is host to plenty of Western money, as you can see behind me, but very few people know that it also has a North Korean embassy. Is that why it was chosen as an honest broker? And what will this mean for relations come the 12th of June?
Maybe one of the reasons it's seen as an honest broker is there's actually not much economic interest. Singapore has economic interests in China and of course in relations with America as well, but in terms of the Korean Peninsula, almost nothing. And so you could say they don't really have an axe in the outcome any more than wanting a globally peaceful outcome.
In the scramble to make the June 12th summit work, both parties have started negotiating, but no one can say for sure if they agree on the idea of denuclearization.
The US is the dominant power in these talks, but you have to say that so far things have gone pretty much how the North Koreans might have wanted it to go. A significant advance in ballistic and nuclear technology and capability, a rapprochement between North Korea and China, a relationship that was in very bad shape, has somewhat improved as this has gone on, and North Korea is getting what it's always wanted. It's being taken seriously as a nuclear power, whatever condition exactly their nuclear capability may be. They're getting what they want. So in many ways, it's a big gamble for the US to enter into these talks. It isn't how one might normally do it, but that's the nature of the Trump presidency. He chooses to do things in a different, sometimes radically different manner to what historically has been the way that diplomacy has been practiced by the US president.
It is unclear if the summit will happen and what it can achieve. A deal with North Korea could help thaw the Asian region and ease sanctions that could aid its economy. Thank you very much for joining us on this special episode as we traveled to the Southeast Asian powerhouse of Singapore. Next week, we're back in South Africa. For now, good evening.